Well, hello again, Ricecast family. We are here. We're back for another episode of the Ricecast. We are here with Dr. Pastor Willie Rice. Pastor Willie Rice, how are you doing today?
Doing great. Last week in January, and first month is almost in the books, 2021.
Oh, that's right. How about that?
Yeah.
I feel like generally January is a long month, but this year it felt like it went by quick to me.
Yeah. At my age, everything flies. So it flies, and it's been we're still facing challenges, obviously, but we're excited about what 2021 is bringing. We think it's been a great month to get started here at Calvary, and it feels like every week you're seeing more and more people back on campus, and of course, many people still staying connected online, and we're grateful for that. But it's fun to see the faces and feel the energy kind of returning to the room. And, it's going to be a journey. We know that. But we're excited about what the year is going to bring.
Absolutely. And one thing this year is going to bring is an at-home Super Bowl.
Unbelievable.
For your Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Well, everybody was wondering how long it would take us to get to that. I know. Here in
if
the podcast.
You had a minute and a half, I think less actually. It's going to be less than a minute and a half.
I thought you might open with
I held off as long as I could. I would have burst.
It's very exciting. As a kid who was born and raised in Tampa, I was born in Tampa General Hospital. My mom was born in Tampa, so I go back. My grandmother on her side was from Plant City. So we're, Tampa back a couple of generations. And I was born and raised in Tampa, and came over into Pinellas County like when I was a boy. My family moved over here, but Tampa Bay's my home. It's where I grew up, and I love Tampa Bay. I remember when the Bucs came aboard. I've tweeted some stuff out this week, some paraphernalia that I collected when I was a boy, and so it's just really fun these many years later. Now our second Super Bowl, but this one seems special because it's home. It's right
at
here.
Home.
And the only regret is, gosh, that we're dealing with the COVID stuff, because this town would be going nuts.
Yeah.
And people are excited.
It is, yeah.
But you just can't express your excitement the way we're normally used to expressing the excitement.
Right.
I cannot imagine what it would be like if this were a normal Super Bowl, and the crowds, I think the crowd outside the stadium might, in a normal setting, might eclipse the crowd inside the stadium.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, people would just be gathered to watch it, and it kind of brings the town together. Sports has a way of doing that.
Yeah.
And so, I still sense the excitement, and we'll be maybe next week we'll have a Super Bowl preview. We'll really break it down.
What to watch for.
Yeah.
The matchups that will sway the Super Bowl with Pastor Willie and myself. Yeah, I'm seeing the Bucs flags out. I'm seeing more hats. Staff meeting the other day. Saw some shirts and hats.
I had my shirt on.
You had your shirt on, that's right.
And went and bought me a new hat with the little Super Bowl logo.
Oh, gotta do it.
And I went to the store. I was on a lunch break, and I dropped in, and there were just hordes of people. It looked like dogs being fed fresh meat. And they were these tables out at the front, and they were just bringing T-shirts. They were bringing sweatshirts and hats and anything with the Bucs logo, anything. They're bringing, people just scarfing it up. They're just buying it, getting T-shirts. I didn't buy a shirt. I'm hoping for a Super Bowl championship. That's the shirt I want. I don't want the NFC championship shirt.
Right.
I want the Super Bowl. And if we lose the Super Bowl, then the NFC championship shirts will be on sale.
That's right.
You can pick those up much cheaper. So, but I'm happy for people to be buying them.
And that is your shopping tip that you guys come here for. Sports tips, weather, shopping tip. We got it all on the Ricecast.
Right.
That's funny. There's a couple things that I want to comment on that as a fellow bald gentleman. You don't rock a hat as often. I rock a hat all the time. Right. I'm going to want the sunburn up there. Do you wear a hat a lot when you're not at work?
When I'm outside, not at work, I tend to not wear a hat around. But
okay, you don't have to call me out like this on the podcast.
Yeah. The whole thing about not wearing a hat indoors on it. But no, I don't. But when I'm out and around,
you do. Because for me, hats they're a way of life.
You need a hat.
I'm walking out the door, I put on the hat.
I like a good hat. I have far more hats than I need, as my wife can attest.
Yeah. I really is just unreal. So many things, but this year, under normal circumstances, we would have hosted a Stanley Cup final, a World Series
and
final,
a Super Bowl.
And a Super Bowl. And our home team would have been involved in all of them.
And perhaps unprecedented. I mean, I'm sure that's happened in other cities. I'm not aware of it. But it's one of those things that probably will happen once in a lifetime. I doubt we would ever have all those things happen again.
Right.
And as much as we may wish they were. And of course, it's as we've talked about, the glass half full or half empty. We got it. We also got it in the year we couldn't go to any of the games. So,
It's been so funny. I've talked, I think, some of the podcasts before. Crosby is my oldest son. He's 5, and he has just been nutty about sports this year. And it really started with the Lightning and the Stanley Cup.
He thinks it's this way every year.
I'm like, son, the life of a Tampa Bay sports fan is not like this.
He doesn't know. He doesn't know what he's in for.
We are also the Yucks. We are also the 0-27, whatever, the longest losing streak in NFL history. It's not always this good.
No.
And you don't really realize that. It is one of those generational things.
Until, I haven't checked it lately, but until recently, Tampa, the Buccaneers, had the worst winning percentage at some point. I saw this stat of any professional sports franchise in any of the major leagues.
Right.
In other words, any of them.
Right.
We had the worst winning percentage. That was I saw that, I don't know, a year or so ago. So I don't know if it's still true. So our history has not been illustrious.
Right. So if you're out there and you're like, I don't really care about football, what are these Bucs fans all nutty about? It's not always like this for us.
That's right.
I was trying to explain to him, it's been 18 years.
It's like if it snows in Florida, we would get really crazy.
Right.
And we would act silly.
If
it snows in Massachusetts, no one cares.
No.
Our
northern friends, our Canadian friends, if you've even had a Floridian around you when it snows, you're like, what is going on with this? You know what, though, as Floridians, some people, they're that way with our lizards when they get down here. You ever seen a northerner see a lizard for the first time?
Things we take for granted, lizards or moss. I've had people come down and get the moss hanging from trees they collect. And I'm like, well, you can have all you want, but you really don't want to sleep on it. But we probably do the same thing if we go somewhere else.
Of course.
We're amazed at something. So,
of course.
Anyway, I want to give a shout out to one of my neighbors who I don't know who it is, who was firing a cannon during the playoff game.
Fire the cannons.
Fire the cannons. I'm sitting there and Tampa scores, and I hear this cannon, and I think it must be on television. And then I realize, well, no, they're at Green Bay. They don't fire a cannon.
Yeah, that's right.
But I knew I heard a cannon, and then I heard it again. Boom, it's cannon. And then I just say, I don't know what I'm hearing. Another touchdown, boom, a cannon. And I looked at my wife. I said, someone's firing a cannon. Which I just had the greatest respect for. I don't think it was an actual cannon. I think it was probably the sound effects of a cannon.
Okay, yeah, you're
probably
right.
But I still had great respect for whoever it was firing a cannon. Much love to you. I think that's fantastic.
So much respect for that. And I'm glad you just said the sound effect, because in my head I'm thinking, Pastor, you live next door to a pirate?
Yeah,
or a Civil War reenactor?
And right now I'm trying to figure out how I can get a cannon sound effect for the Super Bowl, because I want to be that guy.
You got to. Couple of things I want to say. I want to shout somebody out too, Pastor. I'm glad you just said that. I want to shout out a Ricecast listener who contacted me directly. I believe her name was Vivian. She tunes in from Canada, and she said to me in an email, I became a Bucs fan because I was listening to the Ricecast, and I just wanted to congratulate you guys on that. She's emailed me a couple times, and so shout out, Vivian.
All right, Vivian.
We're
hoping you'll be watching during the Super Bowl.
That's right.
I'll be watching.
And I also, I'm starting a program here at Calvary. It is a Super Bowl ticket. A lot of people have Super Bowl tickets, but you've got a dentist appointment or something that day and you're not going to be able to go. If you come to the offices, Anthony Russo is who you're looking for, and you can drop them off. We will make sure that the Super Bowl tickets go to a good home.
Okay.
If you have Super Bowl tickets, again, this is for anybody out there, and you're like,
let me know if that works for you.
We'll let everybody know, of course. But you can come by. I know that that's stressful because you got things, you got shows. Maybe you got a show that night. You're a masked singer or something. And come by the office and we'll take them off your hands. But it's very exciting. Bucs are in the Super Bowl. It's here. It's a very exciting time. Pastor, I want to talk today, podcast topic of the day. We're coming out of a series, too. We thought this kind of all went together. It was a little bit of a word that you shared with our staff, mixed with the end of the series. The topic is on truth. Truth. And this is what you brought it up in a great way of a thing that has been passed around recently, of a commentary on a school of thought or a theory or something like that. And you hear this a lot. As soon as you said it, everybody, oh yeah, we hear that in regards to a lot of things. Something to the effect of, isn't there a little bit of truth in it? Mm-hmm. Well, don't you think there's a little bit of truth in something? And I thought it was so pertinent. You shared that. We're also coming off of this series with Life on Purpose, which has been fantastic, by the way. If you haven't heard those messages, it's been really wonderful. Always put the link in the podcast info if you want to go back and listen. But you have these temptations. Jesus is being tempted by the devil, and what's interesting is that the devil will use Scripture to tempt Jesus. Is it in every instance?
No, in the second temptation.
The second temptation. Okay.
Yep. As in Matthew's version, it's the second one.
Right. So I thought it was just an interesting moment to have that topic come up. Obviously, things in our world, things that we're all encountering every day that have to do with that. How do we deal with that? There's a little bit of truth in it. How do we respond to a
it comes
like
up,
that?
And I've had it come up in a couple of conversations, and again, I'm not shaming anyone. If you found yourself saying it, it's a common thing to say.
Yeah.
And I've had some delightful conversations with people, and it's just a way of instructing and helping. So again, I'm not, no one should think, oh, he's thinking about me or something.
Oh, right.
But occasionally someone will say, or we will think, isn't there some truth in it? I heard that about, like you start trying to deal with conspiracy theories that have become popular on the web and so forth. Well, isn't there some, you say, well, that's not true. And the response is, there's some truth in it. There's some truth. And it's meant to, well, you have to admit there's some truth of that. Well, the problem is that's a very low bar. Is there some truth in it? You need to distinguish between a line of reasoning that says there's some truth in it versus is it true? Those are two entirely different things. And as you pointed out in the series we just dealt with, there's some truth in what Satan said to Jesus. If the standard of truth is there is some truth in it, if I believe, let's say, a conspiracy theory, because when I look at the theory, I conclude, well, there's some truth in it. You see this true, you see that true. Therefore, you lean in that direction. Well, first of all, think of what you're saying. There's some truth in it. What you're acknowledging is that it isn't all true.
Right.
Or at the very least, that I don't know that it's all true. So what you're saying tacitly is there's some error in it. Mm-hmm. Okay, there's some truth in it. That means there's some error in it.
Right.
Well, that's a terrible standard for determining what is truth. There's some truth in what Satan says. But what Satan says is not true. So if you are trying to determine what can I believe, whom can I trust, and my standard is, well, there's some truth in it, that's a terrible standard. You need a much better standard. You will end up falling for all kinds of deception that way. And I have often used the example of like a cult group. This is exactly how cult groups work.
Right.
They don't walk out and say, here's what we believe. Any sane person would go, I don't believe that. We talk often in the city of Clearwater about the cult of Scientology. They don't like me calling them a cult. And I'll say, well, I'll quit calling you a cult when you quit calling yourself a church. That's we'll have a deal. Then they haven't met it yet. So I'm not trying to be pejorative. I'm trying to be accurate there.
Yeah.
And so in the people, though, when you study what the cult of Scientology, or the church, as they like to call it, Scientology, believes, most rational people will go, that's crazy. I've never even, who would believe that?
Right.
And they will say things like this. And I want to caution Christians or people not in Scientology, be careful about saying this, because you're offending people without thinking about it. What they say is, I would never get caught up in something like that.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, that's very offensive to the people who are in that move. That's not a way to convince somebody they're wrong. And secondly, it's and this is my greater concern, it's very offensive to people who are coming out of Scientology. I've cultivated a number of friendships, and they're delightful friendships. They're genuine friendships with people who have come out of Scientology. Cheryl and I have enjoyed sharing meals and spending time and building a relationship. I talk. I love those relationships. And almost to a person, they are delightful. In fact, to a person, they're delightful. They are intelligent. Some of the smartest people, they're great conversations. They're very bright. They're not gullible people.
Right.
That's not how people get in cults. So if the Church of Scientology does not, set up a table on the street corner and say, we believe in Xenu and aliens and blah, 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 nobody would go in.
Right.
Okay. That's not how they get people in cults. You get people in cults by saying, would you like a personality test? That's one of their entry points, by the way. We do a free personality test. And you go in, and guess what? A lot of it's true.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Because, who doesn't love a personality test?
Oh,
we love
right.
to find out about ourselves. So you take a personality test. Well, you're more like that. You know what? That's true. Mm-hmm. And I've taken these tests. You probably have too.
Yep.
A lot of people get into the Enneagram test, and
Yep.
we've done all kinds of personality tests. You take a personality test, and you go, I can't believe they know that. How did they know that about me?
Right.
And then they'll say, and you have problem with these things. These things stress you out. These are, and you go, I've got one in my office, insights profile.
Oh, yeah.
And you just go, how? Oh, it's eerie almost. They start telling you about yourself, and you just go, wow. And they tell you about your wife or your spouse, and she takes a test. You just start laughing at each other.
Yeah.
That's you, that you do that. I don't do that. Yes, you do. You're that. You're on page 12 right there. So it's true, right?
Yeah.
It's true. So a cult, for instance, like Scientology, we might give a personality test. What they say is true. And then they say, would you like more? Well, a lot, yes, I want more. We have a course on how to have a better marriage. We have a course on how to communicate better.
Right.
We have a course on how to handle your money better. All the things they say are probably, not all the things they say, much of the things in those courses might well be true, might in fact be helpful. You might go and go, wow, this helped me communicate with my spouse better. This helped me think about money better. We have courses like that here at Calvary, unapologetically, where we're not trying to deceive anybody, but courses on financial management, courses on better marriage, courses on raising your children. We've done many of these. You go, and they're very practical. We like to think they are biblically based.
Right.
But they're very practical bits of insight and wisdom, and the Bible, brings in biblical truth. It also just brings in observational realities that people sometimes don't know. So there is some truth. This is exactly how cults get you in.
Yeah.
There's some truth. Some truth. So back to our original premise. The way in which we determine something is true or not is not by asking, is there some truth in it? You could end up falling for the greatest deception that way. If the Church of Scientology, for instance, teaches its adherents how to tell time, and they look at the clock and say it's 3:30 in the afternoon when it is in fact 3:30 in the afternoon, well, you could say they are teaching truth, right? There's some truth. You can learn to tell time, right? But that doesn't mean what they're teaching is true.
Right.
You've got to dig beneath the surface. So the problem with conspiracy theories is people look at anecdotal bits of information. Is there a problem with sex trafficking? Yes. Is there a problem with pedophiles in America? Yes. Are there people in government who release information anonymously? Yes. I'm talking about one theory in particular.
Yeah.
Are there corrupt politicians? Yes. And okay, all of that is true, and water is also wet. Right. And none of that is particularly insightful. But what happens is you string together, what about this, and what about that, and did you hear about that, and let me tell you this story. And then people go, wow, you know what, you're right. And then you weave in something you don't know to be true. It perhaps could be true theoretically, but you don't know it to be true.
Right.
And then somebody attests that it is true, although they don't have any proof. And then the next thing you know, and if it reinforces your bias, that is, if it reinforces what you want to be true, let's say there is a politician you do not like, Right. Okay? And I know that's going to be hard for anybody to think about that. But if you can find one in your mind right now. So then if I concoct, well, you remember when they said this? Do you remember when they did that? Do you remember when that story came out? Well, what it means is this, that, and this. Can you prove it? No. But you begin to think, but the evidence, there's some truth in it. So maybe they are a three-headed alien wearing a body. You end up with this bizarre conspiracy that really is as bizarre as believing they're a three-headed alien.
Right.
And you buy it. Yeah. And when someone challenges a conspiratorialist, here's how they respond. Well, there's some truth in it.
Yeah.
But that's not the same thing as saying it is true.
Yeah.
And here's another thing, as long as I'm on a rant. When someone tells you, do the research, I've had that come up a couple of times.
Yeah.
Do the research. Let me tell you what do the research means.
Okay.
If you challenge a conspiratorialist and they tell you, do the research.
Yeah.
I always want to go, no, you do the research. I don't have time to do your homework.
Yeah.
But they don't say that. So when they say do the research, here's what do the research means. Here it is, and the new definition. Do the research means if you would spend as much time as I do reading silly blogs and conspiracy websites, then you could be as brainwashed as I am. That's what do the research means. If you'll waste as much time studying the useless nonsense I study, then maybe you would be as brainwashed as I am, which, first of all, isn't true, because I don't think I would conclude that.
Right.
But I don't have, so somebody says, well, if you won't do the research. No. I don't have to. Imagine, again, the Scientologist speaking to us. Have you been to all of our training courses?
Right.
How do you know what we believe?
Right.
Have you been to OT8, which is their highest level?
Yeah.
Do you know? How do you know what you believe? It's what they say all the time if they're in it.
Yeah.
Well, I don't have to take those training courses.
Right.
To be able to look at the balance of information and make an intelligent decision that something is true or not true. That's true about everything. Okay? I don't have to get run over by a truck to know I don't want to get run over by a truck. Sure. I have enough logical faculties in my possession that I can conclude, based on the evidence I do see, that it is not advantageous to get run over by a truck.
Right.
Now, that's a little bit silly, but I don't have to take courses in Scientology to look at factual information and conclude this is not true. I don't have to spend hours reading all the links you send me. People will send me a link. Read this, read that. No, I don't have time to do that. Maybe I have time. I just don't want to do that. I don't need to do that. That adds nothing to me. It doesn't add information. In fact, when people will send me a link, I sometimes, either will ignore it, or in a conversation I might say, why don't you sum up what that said? Well, we need you to listen to this 40-minute speech. No, I don't want to listen to a 40-minute speech.
Yeah.
Give me a paragraph. Tell me in your own words what the brother is saying.
Right.
Well, I can't do it. I wish you'd listen to the 40-minute speech. Well, if you can't sum it up in a sentence or a paragraph, then you don't even know what he's saying.
Right.
That you don't even know what he's saying.
Right.
You just listen to a 40-minute speech, and he had all this nice, oratory and anecdotal illustrations, and it was funny here and insightful there. And,
yeah.
But if you can't, if you can't say, okay, in a paragraph, this is what the 40-minute speech is about.
Right.
Why should I waste 40 minutes? You don't even know what he's saying. Why should I waste 40 minutes of my time? I'd rather spend 40 minutes of my time reading a good book or reading someone who I know and trust for whatever reason.
Right.
So what we're talking about here is how to help people think critically, how to help people practice discernment, and this comes back to who we are as Christ followers. We're to be people of truth.
Yeah.
That's one of our values at Calvary.
Right.
Truth. We teach the Bible. So be careful when you get led off into these wild tangents. It's amazing the conspiracy theories that people have bought into and believe, and there's no proof of them.
Right.
There's just, there's some truth in it.
Right. And when you brought it up to our staff, something that jumped out at me, so many connection points there. I mean, we talked, like I said, we just talked about the temptations of Jesus by the Matthew account. Is what we've been teaching through. But you even go back to the very beginning, and you go back to Genesis, and you go to the first temptation, and that temptation, what does that sound like? God says to Adam and Eve, you can't eat from this tree. Satan says, did God say you can't eat of any tree?
Right.
So you're like, it's not so far off the truth
Right.
that it's like, oh, no, he didn't say something crazy.
Right.
Like, oh, God never said do a
God
handstand.
won't let you eat. Yeah.
Like, no, it wasn't that far off.
Right.
It was, there was some truth in it.
Exactly.
God did say, don't eat from that tree. God did not say, don't eat from any tree. So when you brought it up to our staff, it was just like a light bulb went off because I thought, yes, this is a very dangerous practice, because if the only things we're guarding ourselves from are the things that are 100% absolutely false, a jumble of words that aren't even coherent together, then we will be susceptible to a lot of things. Yeah. Because the most dangerous stuff is often at least a little true.
Yeah. It's like if someone puts a bowl of soup in front of you and says there's only a little arsenic in it.
Yeah, right.
There's some good stuff in here. There's some good vegetables in here.
Right.
There's some good stuff in here.
Right.
Yeah, but there's arsenic in it too.
Right.
The point, and you say, well, there's only a teaspoon of arsenic.
Yeah.
I don't know how much could kill you, but that could kill you. So the point is not, is there some good in it? The problem is, okay, where's the hook here?
Yeah.
And another great metaphor on that, a great picture of that, is telling time. If I tell you, let's say it's 12 noon, it's lunchtime, and I say, you know what, it's actually 12:15. We're running a bit late. You might be inclined to believe that if you hadn't just glanced at a clock or something,
right.
Because everybody's been 10 or 15 minutes off. We get busy with things, and oh my, where did it go? But if it's right around 12 noon, and I tell you it's 8:30 at night, you're immediately going to know, Pastor, something's wrong here. Are you, whatever? You're lying to me, because I know it's not 8:30 at night. I know it's around noon. So the point is, if my lie is completely preposterous, it's easy to reject.
Right.
The lie that is much more dangerous, is the one that's closer to the truth. Mm-hmm. And it's close enough to the truth that if I am not careful, I will swallow it. And I will swallow it under the guise, well, there's some truth in it.
Right.
There is some truth in it. There's also some arsenic in it.
Right. And like you said, it's one of our values here. It's also when Jesus describes himself, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. There's a lot of words he could have used there. Mm-hmm. And to say truth it's got to be a pillar for all of us. Yeah,
it was one of the reasons we wanted to name it as a value. And again, in the practical input is we teach the Bible. Mm-hmm. We just didn't want to get caught up in all that. We just want to remind ourselves we're people of truth. It's what we have. We have the gospel, the truth about God, the truth about man, the truth about salvation, and the truth about Jesus. We have the truth, and it's as followers of Christ, it's what we are grounded upon, that God has given us his truth, that Jesus is the truth, that what he speaks to us is truth. And so we, all the more reason for us to want to be people of the truth. So to the people listening, if you get online or Facebook or whatever it is you do, and you post something that may not be true, and maybe you find out later is not true, the real damage of that is not only that you're spreading something that isn't true. The real danger of that is that I think we're marring our testimony before the world. And it's one of the reasons I've spoken out so passionately over the last several weeks about some of these political conspiracy theories. It is because I am concerned that many, many Christians have now just so marred. There are people saying, I'm not going to believe what you say about God or Jesus. I mean, you believe all kinds of wacky stuff that I know is not true.
Sure.
So don't waste your platform. Don't waste your testimony on stuff that you don't really know is true. You don't know it's true. So don't repeat it. Do your research, but don't just read a bunch of blogs that aren't verified. One of the ways, by the way, of doing research is to make sure you read both sides of an issue. You haven't done your research until you read somebody who doesn't agree with you on something, and you understand their argument as well as they do.
Yeah.
You really have not done your research. I was speaking to the debate class at Calvary, CCHS, the other day, and had a wonderful time meeting with some of the kids in the we got some of the brightest kids. I mean, I'm telling you, you should be encouraged by the future when you get around our students here. bright kids. And we were talking about this. In debating, you learn, before I can really win a debate, I've got to understand my opponent's argument as well as they do. And if you really want to be fair to someone, make sure you state their position so clearly that if they heard you state it, they would say, that is exactly what I believe.
That's right.
You haven't exaggerated it. You haven't embellished it. You haven't caricatured it. You have stated accurately my position. When you are able to do that, then you are able to begin refuting that position with other evidence, other intellectual or logical arguments. By the way, this will help you in marriage too. You know, one of the things you teach when couples are in disharmony is what's sometimes called empathetic listening. It means this: listen until you understand what they feel. And sometimes, and I don't do a lot of marital counseling anymore, but a good marriage counselor will sometimes say to a man, for instance, men tend to be less good at listening than women, not always, but as a generalization. And so he will say to the man, okay, tell me what she just said. And it's so funny. Guys they'll try about 5 times, and you just have to blow a whistle. No, try again. Because, you know, she'll express why she's frustrated, for instance. And then you say, okay, can you tell me what she just said?
Right.
And they will immediately start debating it. They'll say, well, she's mad, but she doesn't. No, blow a whistle. I'm not asking you an opinion on it.
Right.
I'm not asking you if she's right or wrong. I'm not asking you to give me context. I'm simply asking you, tell me what she just said. Tell me you've heard her. And I'm telling you, particularly men are terrible at this, it will take them about 5 times before they get what you're asking. Okay, we guys can be thick-headed. And then finally he'll go, okay, well, he doesn't want to do it because he wants to argue as he's speaking. But finally you make him. She is frustrated because she thought I was going to be home and I didn't get home. And then they still want to hop in. But Pastor Don, you say, stop. No, I'm not asking for your explanation.
Right.
I just want to know you heard her. Now, and then you look to the wife. You go, did he express what you feel accurately? Only when she says, yes, I'm frustrated because he said one thing and did another. Only then can you then turn to the other person and say, now, would you like to speak to your perspective on that?
Right.
You know, it's very hard to do. And in couples that have grown to hate one another, it's almost impossible to do it.
Right.
But it's the same principle.
Yeah.
Am I listening? Do I get the evidence? Because, and this is a law, Stephen Covey wrote a book years ago, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. One of the first laws is great leaders seek to understand before they seek to be understood. And which means, do you understand what the other person is saying, what they're feeling, what they're thinking? If you don't understand accurately what they say, think, or feel, then your job of being understood by them is going to be that much harder.
Right.
If you're having trouble with a spouse right now, I would encourage you. First of all, understand before you seek to be understood. Find out, even if you're angry, even if they made you mad, even if they were wrong, understand their position, be able to articulate it, then you can work on being understood. But most of us do the opposite, don't we? We want to be understood.
Yeah, right.
We're not interested in understanding. James says this when he says, be slow to speak, be quick to hear, and slow to anger. In American culture, we get all 3 of those backwards. We are quick to speak, we are slow to hear, and we are quick to anger.
And it all ties in together. It was really when you brought this up and shared it with our staff, I just kept thinking about it, and I thought it's just there's so much bad stuff that spins out of things that have a little bit of truth in them. And it really is, and you're right. And when you said your experience, like I said, I think all of us were like, yeah, I've heard someone say, well, you know, there's a little bit of truth in this. Well, a little bit of truth leads to the interpersonal stuff you were just saying, right?
Marriages fail, friendships fail. Yeah.
Some people you have the I'm not listening. Some people you have the assumptions, right? They're like, they said this and they meant this. Well, yes, they did say that, and that is true. Now you spun off 12 different directions, but there was a little bit of
truth in it.
I had a teacher that would talk about something akin to what you were saying. Was I think they called it a straw man argument, where you could articulate someone's school of thought with a little bit of truth,
Right.
all blank, fill in a word group of a people you don't particularly care for.
Yeah, yeah.
Think blank.
Right.
And it was, okay, it's a little bit true.
Right.
But it's mostly not true.
Right.
So I just, over the last day or so, as we were talking about this, I thought, boy, so many things, so many dangerous things. As Christians, it's almost like you should be far. This was what I was going to ask. This is really where I wanted to kind of get with all this. Because here we are listening, for the listeners out there, for myself, we're all dealing with this. So infrequently do we feel like we're getting the whole truth. Do we feel like, we know we have the Bible, that's what you referenced. We have things that are more dedicated to truth and more, but so infrequently. And I love the tip you gave, right? Sometimes if you feel like there's a side, listen to the other side.
Right.
Now you're going to end up closer to the truth. Is there anything else you would say as we're navigating a culture where we feel like we're often not getting the full truth?
Yeah, I think that's a huge one. I don't know that I have the simple things. I think there are probably a number of things, we could probably list them out, things you can do to learn to think critically and practice greater discernment. Because the real grief that I feel right now is that the very people who ought to be known for our commitment to truth have now gotten the reputation of being people who will swallow a bunch of nonsense.
You're right.
And I think that is to our great shame and our great harm. And it's a discipleship issue, because it says to me that we have not done a good job teaching our people to think biblically, critically, and with discernment. And that is not a good sign for the Christian movement in America. We should be known as people that are wise and grounded in discernment. I think it's some of the things we've just said. How do you do that? First of all, be grounded in the Bible. I mean, just lean into biblical truth. There's just something about the Bible, which is the truth of God's Word, that, again, every time Jesus battled one of the temptations of Satan, he used Scripture every single time. Satan quoted it one time, but Jesus quoted it 3 times. So the more that you can learn to think biblically and be grounded in biblical truth, the more you're going to grow to be wise and discerning. Because sometimes I'll hear something, might be a little truth in it, but I just know it's off. Why? Because it doesn't correspond to the Word of God.
Right.
It doesn't correspond to what Jesus taught. So I don't have to take 8 courses in Scientology to know it's not true.
Right.
Because it doesn't correspond to what Jesus taught. It doesn't correspond to what the Bible said. And now, I can give logical reasons later on, but I immediately sense something's wrong there. And so there are a lot of other things. So A, become grounded in the Word of God. B, seek to understand before you seek to be understood, just like we said.
That's
Learn
right.
to understand the other side, the position, be empathetic, listen carefully. I think the advice of James is the good one here. Be slow to speak and quick to hear.
Yeah.
And you hear, that is your intake of information. By listening carefully, by understanding what a person is saying. I think that's very, very, I think you said one, not assuming. Assumption, remember, is the lowest form of knowledge. Assumption is the lowest form of knowledge. And assumption is we make assumptions based on a little bit of truth. We see something that is true, observationally true, and we assume that because that is true, the next thing is also true. So because you said that, you meant that. How many conflicts have come over that?
Oh, yeah.
Because I read your email that way, your tone must have been that.
Right.
I've had this happen many times. You read an email, you think somebody's apoplectic and angry. You sit there and call them, and you realize, no, they're not angry at all. They were just trying to state, and then sometimes even they're apologetic. I should have said it in a kinder way or whatever.
Sure.
And I'm sure words I've said have come across more unkind than I wanted them to be. So we don't assume things with one another. So I think just those are some of the things. But that would be a good list to enumerate out. How do we learn to think with greater discernment? But I think we've given you a couple there. Be grounded in the Word of God. Learn to understand before you seek to be understood. Don't assume. Listen carefully. All those things.
Yeah. And I this is sort of funny, but in its application for many of us day to day. But I truly mean this, especially in today's form of communication. I mean, how many times somebody's voice to text sending you a text message, and then you read it a certain way, and it's like, oh, I didn't even mean that's not even what I meant to say. There's just so many.
Sometimes
things.
it shoots words in there you didn't mean to say.
Well, that's
you're
what
like,
I'm saying.
goodness.
And then you go back and you're like, oh, so and so super mad at me.
It'll have you cussing somebody out if you're not careful, and you're like, I just whatever. And there are many funny stories, but probably better not go into those. So, right. But yeah, that happens all the time. And the beauty of media, that it is so quick and I can post anything and have a broad audience, is it's also its downfall. That it doesn't. If you used to have to write a letter and send it, well, the act of writing a letter, it takes longer, right? And then it sits there. And then if you mailed it, which no one does anymore, but for the kids out there, ask your grandparents. We used to mail letters. You even had 24 hours in the mailbox, right?
That's right.
There were people that would go to the mailbox in the morning and say, I'm taking that letter back. I'm not sending that. Well, now you hit send, you post, boom. You haven't given the thought. You haven't been careful, which is why it is good to be careful before you hit send and post, and just think it through. But that all goes to being careful in what you say. Yeah,
it's good. It's important. I only know the time that I've lived in. We all only know the times that we've lived in. But it feels more important maybe today than ever with all the forms of communication we're always dealing with. To that James idea of just being slow to speak, quick to listen. It's just that's an easy first step there. I love too. I did want to throw this in just as a quick. The follow-up questions. We've talked about this a couple of times. Even just somebody who says something that triggers something in you. Even just asking, what does that mean to you? When you say that, what is that? There's opportunity to ask good questions, and that's part of that. I think listening and active listening is to say, can you unpack that a little bit more for me?
I think one of the skills we could all learn is if someone says something that we want to instinctively disagree with. On politics, for instance, or sometimes it may be a spiritual issue, as you're having conversations with people who don't share your convictions. Instead of reflexively trying to debate, mind that a little bit. Instead of saying, well, I think this or that, or what about this or what about that? Instead of the what abouts, I think the first question ought to be, well, tell me a little more. Help me understand how you came to that position. Somebody says, oh, I think abortion should be legal. Rather than us immediately pouncing with 5 reasons why we disagree, and I most certainly disagree with that position, wouldn't it be better to go, well, how did you come to that position? What are you, and even ask questions. What are your thoughts about that? Does that concern you? Does that give you pause?
Sure.
Ask a couple of follow-up questions. And it's very similar to the Socratic method of teaching. By asking the right questions in the right way, you can draw out information. And people are a lot more likely, here's another just helpful hint for life, people are a lot more likely to change their mind about something if they haven't been attacked. In other words, if it's just evidence that has been gently and gradually presented and you give them the space to process it, it's a lot, and we've all had to change our mind about something. It's no fun. I mean, the words, I was wrong, boy, they're hard to say, aren't they?
Oh, yeah.
It's so hard for me to go, you know what, I was wrong on that one. But it's a lot easier to help someone get there if they kind of get there on their own. And what you did is you gave them some evidence. You let them think, what about this? What about that? You ask them some intelligent questions. And I've changed my mind on a lot more things because somebody just asked me 4 or 5 good questions and got my wheels to turning. I've had people ask me questions, and I started to spit out a reflexive answer. But even as I spit out my answer, I was like, that doesn't make much sense. I don't think that. I need to think about that one a little more. And then I go back and think about it a little more, and I go, I think I may have been wrong about that. So if you attack someone and debate someone, you're not likely to change their mind as much as if you just have a conversation with them. You give them information. You help pull stuff out. And you begin to invite them in a safe environment to consider that maybe not all of their presuppositions are accurate.
So good. All good. We got to be people of truth.
People of
truth.
We got
to do that. And the truth is, the Bucs are going to be in the Super Bowl.
They are. They are there. That is not a theory. They are.
It is true.
There.
It is happening. We're taking on the. Let me get week and a half out. What's your prediction? What do you think's going to happen?
Week and a half.
February 7th.
I need a formal week. I don't know. Can I wait till next week? I'll make a prediction next week. Next week I will make a prediction.
Next week on the Ricecast.
Or whenever. It's going to just be hard for me to pick against Tampa. I know Kansas City is the favored team.
They're very good.
And they're defending champions. I think they're favored by 3.5 points the last I saw.
That
they
sounds
have
right.
a brilliant young quarterback. He's fantastic.
Yeah.
They had gone a long time without a Super Bowl themselves until last year. They are a team that is going to be around for a while. They're a very good team. But how do you pick against Tampa Bay in our home stadium? No, I can't do it. So I'll have to pick a score later.
An official score next week.
Okay.
I read a post just this morning. This is a bit like getting to watch LeBron James play Michael Jordan, which I love the comparison because that's how good Mahomes and Brady. It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. Super Bowl here in Tampa. Again, one more time. Anybody with tickets, don't know what to do with them. It's Anthony Russo, arusso@calvary.us if you want to communicate digitally so you can get a hold of me. We will set up a way for us to take those tickets off your hands. And we'll be back with another Ricecast next week. We'll talk to you then.